I'm Sophia Harper, 32, and I never thought I'd see these words from my own brother. Sorry, Soph, but you're not invited to the wedding. Natalie doesn't want you there. Ryan and I shared everything growing up, secrets, dreams, even our deepest fears. Now, his text message glowed on my screen like a slap across the face, all because his fiancée doesn't want me there. The Christmas incident flashed through my mind. I should have known then that something was terribly wrong. I never imagined that being excluded from my own brother's wedding would be just the beginning of a war I never wanted to fight. Before I dive into this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with toxic family drama. Trust me, this story is going to take you on a wild ride that might feel all too familiar to some of you. Let's jump right in. Ryan and I grew up in a typical suburban home in Connecticut. Just 2 years apart, we were the kind of siblings that neighborhood parents would point to as an example. Why can't you get along like the Harper kids? We had our fights, sure, but they never lasted. By nightfall, we'd be back to building blanket forts or planning elaborate pranks on our cousins. Our bond was cemented when our parents, Diana and William, divorced during my sophomore year of high school. Ryan was a senior, already looking at colleges, but he put everything on hold to make sure I was okay. I still remember the night I found him packing his bags. "Are you leaving too?" I'd asked, panic rising in my chest. "Just applying to local colleges now," he'd said, tossing his Stanford brochures in the trash. "Someone's gotta be here to make sure you don't burn the house down trying to cook mac and cheese." That's who Ryan was, the person who would sacrifice his dreams to protect mine. He stayed local, attended University of Connecticut, and came home every weekend. We navigated the new normal of holiday splits and our father's new girlfriend together. When Dad remarried a year later, Ryan held my hand under the table during the entire ceremony. Fast forward 12 years. I'd built a successful interior design business in Boston, and Ryan had climbed the corporate ladder at a marketing firm in the same city. We still met for Sunday brunches, still called each other first with good news or bad, until Natalie Jenkins entered the picture. Ryan met her at a charity gala 3 years ago. I'd canceled last minute due to food poisoning, something I would later come to regret deeply. "She's amazing, Soph," he'd gushed over the phone. "Smart, funny, beautiful, and she runs her own lifestyle brand on Instagram." I met Natalie a month later. She was indeed beautiful, tall, with perfect chestnut hair, and a smile that could light up billboards. She complimented my apartment, asked thoughtful questions about my design work, and brought an expensive bottle of wine. On the surface, she was perfect. But something in my gut twisted when I saw how she looked at Ryan, not with love, but with satisfaction, like she'd acquired a particularly valuable item. "You're being ridiculous," I told myself. "She makes him happy." The changes were subtle at first. Ryan canceled our standing brunches more frequently. When we did meet, he'd check his phone constantly, explaining that Natalie needed his input on posts for her growing social media presence. Then came the opinions, little comments that didn't sound like my brother. "Should you be eating that? Natalie says refined carbs are basically poison. Natalie thinks you should really be charging more for your services. She says you're undermining the industry with those rates." I tried to be supportive. I followed her Instagram account where she posed in immaculate rooms and promoted everything from detox teas to luxury candles. Her followers numbered in the hundreds of thousands, and she'd recently been featured in a few lifestyle magazines. Ryan beamed with pride at her success, while my own interior design firm built through years of education and apprenticeship was something he now referred to as that decorating thing you do. The first major incident occurred at Thanksgiving. I had just ended a 2-year relationship with James, a surgeon who ultimately couldn't balance his career and our relationship. The wound was fresh, and I wasn't eager to discuss it. So, single at 32, Natalie had commented while passing me the cranberry sauce. "That biological clock must be getting pretty loud by now." Ryan had laughed, actually laughed, while I sat there stunned. "I'm focused on my career," I'd replied evenly. "Of course you are," Natalie had said with a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Some women just aren't meant for the whole family thing. There's always cats." When I'd confronted Ryan later, he accused me of being overly sensitive. "She was just making conversation, Soph. Not everyone walks on eggshells around you like James did." Then came Christmas. I'd spent a ridiculous amount on a designer dress for the occasion, wanting to feel confident around Natalie and her picture-perfect appearance. I was talking to our cousin David when I felt the cold splash on my back. Natalie had tripped and spilled an entire glass of red wine down my cream-colored dress. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she'd exclaimed, hands covering her mouth in apparent horror. But I'd turned quickly enough to catch the slight smirk before the performance began. As I stood there, wine seeping through the expensive fabric, Natalie burst into tears. "I feel terrible. I'm just so nervous around your family. I wanted everything to be perfect." And just like that, I became the villain. Ryan comforted his sobbing girlfriend while giving me a disappointed look, as if I had somehow caused this situation. My parents rushed to soothe Natalie rather than help me clean my ruined dress. In the bathroom, dabbing futilely at the stain, I caught my reflection in the mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed like a stranger, someone uncertain and diminished. That was the moment I should have recognized what was happening. Instead, I told myself it was just wedding stress and holiday tension. I never imagined how much worse things would get. By the time Ryan proposed 6 months later, Natalie had systematically repositioned me in his life. I was no longer his confidant and best friend. I was the difficult sister, the career-obsessed woman who just didn't understand their relationship, and somehow, I'd let it happen. The text came on a Tuesday morning in April, 3 months before their planned July wedding. "Ryan, hey Soph, need to talk to you about something. The wedding invitation list is getting out of hand. Natalie and I had to make some tough decisions." I'd stared at my phone, waiting for the follow-up, assuming they were cutting distant cousins or colleagues. Then, "Ryan, sorry Soph, but you're not invited to the wedding. Natalie doesn't want you there. She says you've been negative about our relationship from the start, and she doesn't want that energy on her special day. I hope you understand." I read the message 5 times before it fully registered. My hands shook so badly I had to put the phone down on my desk. Not invited to my only brother's wedding? It felt like a cruel joke. I called him immediately. "Is this for real?" I demanded when he answered. "Look, I know you're upset." "Upset? Ryan, I'm your sister, your only sister. And Natalie is going to be my wife," he countered, his voice hardening. "This is her day." "It's your day too," I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "We've talked about your wedding since we were kids. Remember when you made me promise to be your best man?" "We were 12, Sophia. Things change. People change." "What have I done that's so terrible? Tell me." The silence stretched between us. "You've always been jealous of my relationship with Natalie," he finally said, repeating words that didn't sound like his own. "You make snide comments. You question her motives. You try to make her feel small." "That's not true. When have I ever—" "The Christmas dress incident? You made her feel awful over an accident." "An accident?" I nearly shouted. "Ryan, she—" "See? This is exactly what she's talking about. You can't just let things go." The conversation devolved from there. Each point I raised was twisted or dismissed. Each example of Natalie's behavior toward me was reframed as my jealousy or oversensitivity. By the end of the call, I was crying and Ryan was coldly telling me to take some time to reflect on why you can't just be happy for me. After hanging up, I immediately called our parents, certain they would be as shocked as I was. Instead, my mother sighed heavily. "Honey, we knew you'd be upset. We tried to talk to Ryan, but—" "But what?" I demanded. "Natalie is very important to him," my father chimed in. "And the wedding plans have been stressful enough without adding conflict. So you're okay with this? Your daughter being excluded from your son's wedding?" "No one's happy about it," my mother said carefully. "But maybe it's best if you just let this go, for Ryan's sake." "For Ryan's sake." The words echoed in my head as I hung up. In the span of an hour, my entire family had effectively told me that my feelings, my place in our family, was less important than keeping the peace with my brother's fiancée. I sat in my apartment alone, surrounded by the successful life I'd built, awards from design competitions on the walls, photos of completed projects, a calendar booked solid with clients who respected my work. And yet, I'd never felt more like a failure. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend, Jessica. "Jessica, still on for dinner tonight?" I typed through tears. "Jessica, still on for dinner tonight?" Her response was immediate. "Jessica, I'm coming over, now, this is bullshit." Jessica arrived 30 minutes later with wine and righteous indignation. As I recounted the conversations, her expression shifted from shock to fury. "This is emotional abuse," she declared. "She's isolating him from his family, from you, specifically because you're the one person who sees through her act." But why would my parents go along with it? Because it's easier, Jessica said simply. Standing up to manipulative people is hard. They're taking the path of least resistance. As we talked, my phone kept lighting up with notifications. Curious despite my misery, I opened Instagram to find posts from various family members expressing excitement about Ryan and Natalie's upcoming wedding. There was my cousin Rachel posing with a team bride shirt at what appeared to be a bridal shower I hadn't been invited to. My Aunt Linda posting about hotel arrangements for the big day. Even my parents had shared a professional engagement photo of the couple with the caption, "Counting down to July 15th when our family grows by one more." Messages started coming in from extended family. "What are you wearing to Ryan's wedding? Trying not to clash in photos. Are you doing a speech at the reception? We should coordinate so we don't cover the same stories." Each one was a fresh wound. I hadn't just been excluded from the wedding, I'd been excluded from the entire celebration process while everyone else participated. And no one, not one family member, had thought it strange enough to mention to me. "Look at the venue," Jessica said, pointing to a photo my cousin had tagged. My stomach dropped. The Westfield Manor was an exclusive historic estate I had discovered during a design project last year. I'd mentioned it to Ryan specifically when he'd started wedding planning, telling him about the hidden garden that would be perfect for summer ceremonies. "Scroll through Natalie's Pinterest," Jessica suggested, her detective skills in full gear. What we found made me feel physically ill. Natalie's wedding planning board was practically a carbon copy of the private board I'd been curating for years, a board I'd shared with Ryan once during a wine-fueled conversation about our future dreams. The color scheme, the flower arrangements, even the specific vintage champagne coupe style I'd fallen in love with all appeared in her My Perfect Day collection. "This isn't just about excluding me," I whispered, the realization dawning cold and clear. "This is about erasing me." 3 days after Ryan's text, my Aunt Linda called. I almost didn't answer, still raw from the family betrayal, but professional habit won out. "Sophia, darling, how are you?" Her cheerful tone was jarring given recent events. I managed a non-committal fine. "Wonderful. Listen, I know it's last minute, but I need a huge favor. Ryan and Natalie's wedding venue needs some tweaking for the reception, and I immediately thought of you. You have such a good eye, and it would be a special touch having family involved in the preparations." I sat in stunned silence as she continued describing what they needed: advice on lighting placement, suggestions for the table arrangements, professional opinions on the flow of the space. "Aunt Linda," I finally interrupted, "I'm not going to the wedding." "What? Of course you are. You're Ryan's sister." The confusion in her voice was genuine. I felt a cold wave of understanding wash over me. "Ryan didn't tell you?" "I've been explicitly uninvited. Natalie doesn't want me there." "That's ridiculous. There must be some mistake." "No mistake. You can ask him yourself." There was a long pause before she spoke again, her voice hesitant. "Well, I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe it's about, you know." "About what?" Another pause. "About what happened with Natalie's brother at Christmas." My mind raced. Natalie didn't have a brother. At least, none that had ever been mentioned or appeared at any family function. "What are you talking about? What brother?" "Oh," Aunt Linda's voice became flustered. "I thought. Natalie told everyone you made an inappropriate pass at her brother during the Christmas party. That you'd had too much to drink and it created a very uncomfortable situation. I assumed that's why there was tension." The accusation was so absurd I actually laughed. "Aunt Linda, Natalie doesn't have a brother who was at Christmas. I've never met any brother of hers. This is a complete fabrication. But she showed everyone the texts, from you to him." My blood ran cold. "What texts?" As Aunt Linda reluctantly described them, I realized Natalie had created an elaborate lie, complete with manufactured evidence. According to her, I had met her brother Jason at Christmas, aggressively flirted with him despite his discomfort, and then sent inappropriate messages afterward, messages she had discovered on his phone and felt obligated to share with the family to explain the wedding exclusion. Over the next few days, I reached out to other family members and discovered this wasn't the only lie circulating. Different relatives had heard different stories. I was planning to wear white to the wedding to upstage the bride. I had criticized Natalie's wedding choices to vendors, trying to sabotage her plans. I was going through a mental health crisis and might cause a scene. I was secretly still in love with Natalie's ex-boyfriend from college. Each story was tailored to its audience, designed to hit just the right note of believability while painting me as unstable, vindictive, or pathetic. I finally cornered my cousin Rachel, who had always been straightforward to a fault. Just tell me exactly what Natalie has been saying, I demanded. Rachel shifted uncomfortably. She showed us texts, Sophia. From you to her brother. They were pretty explicit. Can you show me these alleged texts? She didn't want them shared further out of respect for you, Rachel replied, the irony apparently lost on her. But I saw them with my own eyes. Rachel, I have never met Natalie's brother. These texts are fake. She showed us your number, your profile picture. That can be faked. Ask yourself, have you ever heard me mention meeting her brother? Has anyone in the family ever met this brother? A flicker of doubt crossed her face. Well, no, but don't you think it's strange that I've suddenly developed this obsession with a man no one has met? That I'd risk my relationship with Ryan for some random guy? Rachel had the grace to look troubled. When you put it that way, desperate to clear my name, I composed a careful email to the extended family. I included screenshots of my actual text history, showing no messages to any unknown numbers, documentation proving I was at a client dinner the night I had supposedly sent the harassing texts, and a calm, factual account of the growing pattern of isolation I had experienced. The response was worse than I anticipated. Rather than prompting questions about Natalie's claims, my email was forwarded directly to her and Ryan. Within hours, my brother called, livid. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he shouted. "Sending a manifesto to the entire family about your paranoid delusions? Natalie is in tears. Ryan, none of what she's saying is true. I've never met her brother. I've never sent inappropriate texts. These are lies designed to isolate you from me." "God, listen to yourself," he spat. "This is exactly why you're not welcome at our wedding. You're obsessed with destroying my happiness. Stay away from my fiancé. Stay away from me, and get some help." He hung up before I could respond. Minutes later, my parents called, their voices strained with disappointment. "Sophia, this has gone too far," my father said. "If you can't be happy for your brother, at least don't actively try to ruin his wedding." "I'm not. We raised you better than this," my mother interjected. "I don't know what's gotten into you, but this behavior stops now." As I sat in the wreckage of my family relationships, I realized with stark clarity, this wasn't just about a wedding invitation anymore. Natalie was systematically destroying my place in my family, and she was doing it with precision and planning. What I couldn't understand was why. The following Monday, I arrived at my office to find my assistant, Ben, looking unusually tense. "The Richardsons canceled their contract," he said without preamble. I stared at him in disbelief. The Richardson project was a complete home renovation worth over $200,000, the kind of high-profile job that led to referrals and magazine features. What? Why? We just finalized the design concepts last week. They loved everything. Ben handed me an email printout. They cited concerns about your professional character and information they recently received. They've already hired Brennan Designs instead. What information? From whom? They wouldn't say. Just that they needed someone with unquestionable integrity for their project. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. Call them. Set up a meeting. I want to address whatever concerns they have directly. But the Richardsons refused to meet. Their assistant would only say they had seen enough evidence and wished to terminate our relationship without further discussion. The cancellation fee barely covered the hours I'd already invested in their project. By Wednesday, a second client had canceled, this time a corporate office redesign that had been in the planning stages for months. "I don't understand," I told Michael, my business partner, as we sat in our conference room reviewing the sudden damage to our project pipeline. "These are established relationships. What could possibly have changed their minds so abruptly? Have you seen these?" Michael slid his tablet across the table. The screen displayed a series of online reviews for our firm, all posted within the last week, all one-star ratings with variations of the same complaints. Designer attempted to overcharge for materials. When confronted, became unprofessional and hostile. Caught Harper Designs trying to use counterfeit furnishings while charging authentic prices. Complete scam operation. Designer made inappropriate advances toward my husband during home consultation, highly unprofessional and predatory behavior. The reviews came from accounts with legitimate-looking names and profile pictures, but none were clients we recognized. "These are fake," I said, my voice shaking with anger and fear. "None of these people have ever worked with us." "I know that," Michael replied grimly. "But potential clients researching our firm don't know that, and look at this." He pulled up our firm's Instagram account, where similar accusations had appeared in the comments section of our recent posts. Then he showed me a fake profile that had been created in my name, featuring altered photos that made it appear I was living a reckless, unprofessional lifestyle. Someone is systematically attacking your reputation, Sophia, and they know exactly how to hit where it hurts most. The connection to Natalie seemed obvious to me, but Michael remained skeptical until I explained the wedding situation and the pattern of lies that had followed. It seems extreme, he said, even for family drama. Let me show you something. I pulled up Natalie's Instagram profile and scrolled to a post from 3 days ago, a beautifully arranged flat lay of wedding invitation samples. In the comments, she had thanked at Victoria Marketing for always making magic happen. Victoria Marketing is run by Natalie's cousin, I explained. They specialize in online reputation management and social media strategy, including, I'd bet, creating convincing fake accounts and reviews. Michael's skepticism faded as we connected more dots. The timing aligned perfectly. The targeted nature of the attacks focused specifically on undermining my professional credibility, the foundation of my identity apart from family. And the sophisticated approach suggested someone with insider knowledge of digital manipulation. By Friday, we had lost 4 major clients and had 2 potential projects put on hold pending resolution of concerns. The financial impact was becoming serious, not just for me but for my employees who depended on our firm's success. That night, alone in my apartment, I found myself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., paralyzed by a combination of rage and helplessness. For the first time, I considered giving up. Maybe if I apologized to Natalie for what? I wasn't even sure she would stop the campaign against me. Maybe if I publicly congratulated them on their wedding and disappeared from Ryan's life, she would be satisfied. My phone lit up with a text from Jessica. You awake? Can't stop thinking about your situation? I called her immediately. I don't know what to do anymore, I admitted, my voice breaking. She's winning. She's taken my family, and now she's coming for my livelihood. My phone lit up with a text from Jessica. You awake? Can't stop thinking about your situation? That's exactly why you can't give up, Jessica said firmly. This isn't just about a wedding anymore. This woman is trying to destroy everything you've built because she sees you as a threat. You didn't do anything except exist as someone important in Ryan's life. Someone he respected and loved. Someone who might eventually see through her facade and influence him. As we talked through the night, something hardened within me. The devastation I'd been feeling began to crystallize into determination. You're right, I finally said. This stops now. I'm not going to let her destroy everything I've worked for. That's my girl, Jessica replied. So what's the plan? First, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Then we gather evidence, and then we fight back. You didn't do anything except exist as someone important in Ryan's life. Someone he respected and loved. Someone who might eventually see through her facade and influence him. We need to be strategic, Michael said the next morning as we sat in his home office, away from potentially curious ears at our workplace. If we're going up against someone with marketing expertise and a vindictive streak, we can't just fire back accusations. Jessica nodded in agreement. We need irrefutable evidence and a support network. People who will corroborate your side of the story. The first step was documenting everything, creating a detailed timeline of events from my first meeting with Natalie to the present day. We cataloged every interaction, every slight, every rumor I'd heard. Jessica helped me screenshot the fake reviews and social media accounts before they could be deleted. We need to find others who have experienced similar treatment from Natalie, I said. There's no way I'm the first person she's done this to. What about that friend she was always posting with when she first met Ryan? Jessica suggested. Emma something? They seemed inseparable, and then she just disappeared from Natalie's social media. After some digging, we located Emma Russell, now living in Chicago. When I reached out via email explaining the situation in vague terms, her response was immediate and chilling. I've been waiting for this call. She did the same thing to me. We arranged a video chat that evening. Emma's face appeared on my screen, pretty but tired looking, with the wariness of someone who had been through emotional combat. Natalie and I were best friends for 5 years, she began without preamble. We met in college, started our social media careers together. I actually helped her set up her first professional photo shoot. Then she met Ryan. What about that friend she was always posting with when she first met Ryan? Jessica suggested. Emma something? They seemed inseparable, and then she just disappeared from Natalie's social media. After some digging, we located Emma Russell, now living in Chicago. When I reached out via email explaining the situation in vague terms, her response was immediate and chilling. "I've been waiting for this call." She did the same thing to me. We arranged a video chat that evening. Emma's face appeared on my screen, pretty but tired looking, with the wariness of someone who had been through emotional combat. She told everyone I'd been stealing her content ideas, copying her posts before she could publish them. In the influencer world, that's career suicide. She even photoshopped messages to make it look like I'd been trash-talking our mutual clients. Emma had dated one of Natalie's previous boyfriends after they broke up with Natalie's explicit blessing at the time. As soon as things got serious between them, she absolutely lost it, Emma explained. She couldn't stand seeing him happy with someone else, even though she was already with Ryan by then. This information led us to Derek Chambers, Natalie's ex-boyfriend. Initially reluctant to get involved, he eventually agreed to talk after I explained how she was affecting my business and family relationships. "Natalie is complicated," he said carefully during our coffee meeting. "When things are good, they're amazing. But cross her, question her, or outshine her in any way, and she becomes someone else entirely." He described a relationship marked by jealousy, control, and increasing isolation from his friends and family. By the end, I barely spoke to my sister, who had been my best friend my whole life. Natalie had convinced me that everyone was against our relationship, that no one understood how special she was except me. "How did it end?" I asked. "She met Ryan," he said simply. "Apparently, I was no longer useful. But here's what you should know: when I started dating Emma later, Natalie launched a smear campaign that nearly got me fired from my job. Anonymous tips to my boss about drug use, embezzlement, all completely fabricated. I had to move to a different state to rebuild my career." With each conversation, the picture became clearer. We found 5 other people who had experienced similar treatment from Natalie when they somehow threatened her carefully constructed narrative: former friends, colleagues, even a cousin who had once been close to her. Meanwhile, we took steps to protect my business. Michael hired a digital security expert to strengthen our online presence against further attacks. We reached out personally to every client, past and present, explaining that we were experiencing targeted harassment and assuring them of our professional integrity. Most were understanding, some even offered support. As word spread through the industry about the fake reviews, colleagues rallied around us. 2 prominent design magazines published features on our recent projects, providing crucial credibility when we needed it most. The breakthrough in the family front came unexpectedly. My grandmother Margaret, the family matriarch who lived in Florida and largely stayed out of daily dramas, called me one evening. "Sophia, what's this I hear about you not attending Ryan's wedding?" I braced myself for another lecture but decided to be completely honest. I told her everything, from the initial exclusion to the fabricated stories and professional attacks. There was a long silence when I finished. Then, "I've lived too long to be fooled by pretty faces and charming manners. Your grandfather, God rest his soul, always said you were the most honest person in this family. If you say these things are happening, I believe you." Her support brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you, Grandma. Now, send me everything you've collected, all of it. I want to see for myself exactly what this young woman has been doing." Grandmother Margaret became an unexpected ally. At 84, she wasn't active on social media, but she commanded respect in the family. After reviewing my evidence, she began making calls, asking pointed questions that no one dared dodge. Our careful documentation was beginning to pay off. A few family members, including cousin David, who had witnessed Natalie's accidental wine spill at Christmas, started expressing doubts about her version of events. The fortress of isolation was developing cracks. Then disaster struck. I returned home one evening to find my apartment door ajar. Inside, drawers had been emptied, papers scattered, but oddly, my television and jewelry remained untouched. The only thing missing was my laptop, which contained much of our evidence against Natalie. The police officer who responded seemed skeptical when I suggested it wasn't a random break-in. "Burglars typically take valuables, ma'am. Maybe you misplaced the computer?" That night, I received an anonymous text. "Back off, or things will get much worse. This is your final warning." Rather than frightening me into submission, the break-in and threat had the opposite effect. They confirmed what I already suspected. Natalie was desperate and willing to cross serious lines. And desperate people make mistakes. "We need to be extra careful now," Jessica warned. She knows we're collecting evidence. Good, I replied with a determination that surprised even me. Let her worry. Let her wonder what we know and who we've talked to. It's her turn to feel off balance for a change. We created secure backup copies of everything we'd gathered, storing them in multiple locations. I sent a comprehensive file to my lawyer friend Benjamin, who reviewed it and agreed to represent me if things escalated further. Based on what I'm seeing here, he told me, you have a strong case for defamation and tortious interference with business relationships. If you wanted to pursue legal action, you could. I considered it, but legal battles are messy, expensive, and public. My immediate goal wasn't to destroy Natalie, it was to protect myself and hopefully open my brother's eyes to the manipulation he was experiencing. To that end, we took a calculated risk. Using an anonymous email account, we sent Ryan a small selection of the evidence we'd gathered, just enough to plant seeds of doubt without overwhelming him. We included testimony from Derek about Natalie's pattern of isolation tactics, screenshots of the fake reviews targeting my business, and a timeline showing how various family members had received different stories about why I wasn't invited to the wedding. The response was immediate. Ryan called, more angry than I'd ever heard him. Is this your idea of a joke? Creating fake evidence to slander Natalie? This is sick, Sophia, sick. But beneath the fury, I detected something else: uncertainty, a tiny crack in his absolute conviction. It wasn't much, but it was a start. What we didn't anticipate was Natalie's next move. The following day, police officers appeared at my office with questions about a report filed by Natalie Jenkins, claiming I had threatened her life in a series of emails and phone calls. I never sent any emails or made any calls to her, I told the officers, stunned by the escalation. We'll need you to come to the station to answer some questions, one officer replied. As I was led out past my shocked employees, I realized the game had changed again. Natalie was now using the legal system as a weapon, and I was caught in her crosshairs. The police questioning lasted 4 hours. They showed me printed emails allegedly sent from my personal account, containing explicit threats against Natalie's safety. The messages were vicious and disturbing and completely fabricated. I did not write these, I stated firmly, over and over. My email account must have been compromised. I would never send something like this to anyone. Fortunately, Benjamin arrived quickly after my call and guided me through the process. With his help, we were able to demonstrate that the IP address that sent the threatening emails didn't match any of my devices or locations. The technical evidence supported my innocence, but the experience left me shaken. They're releasing you without charges for now, Benjamin explained as we left the station. But Natalie has filed for a restraining order. The hearing is next week. A restraining order? Based on fake emails? The standard is reasonable fear, not definitive proof. And given the content of those emails, a temporary order will likely be granted until the full hearing. He was right. 3 days later, I was served with papers requiring me to stay at least 500 feet away from Natalie Jenkins and Ryan Harper. I couldn't contact them by phone, email, social media, or through third parties. The temporary order would be reviewed at a hearing in 10 days. The timing wasn't coincidental. The family gathering before the wedding, an intimate dinner for close relatives at my parents' home, was scheduled for exactly 1 week away. With the restraining order in place, I couldn't attend without risking arrest. Another family event Natalie had successfully excluded me from. The anonymous texts continued, becoming more frequent and more threatening. Hope you enjoy being alone forever. Everyone knows you're crazy now. No one believes a word you say. Maybe your business should have insurance for when accidents happen. I reported each message to the police, but without being able to prove who sent them, there was little they could do except add them to my file. My sense of security eroded further when Jessica's car was vandalized after she spent an evening at my apartment, all 4 tires slashed and stay out of it scratched into the paint. She's escalating because she's scared, Michael reasoned when I showed him the latest threats. You're making progress. People are starting to question her version of events. He was right. Despite the restraining order, or perhaps because of its obvious tactical timing, more family members were expressing concern about the situation. My uncle Robert, a retired judge and my father's older brother, had called asking for the whole story, from the beginning. Grandmother Margaret had apparently been busy making her own inquiries. The confrontation I'd been both dreading and anticipating happened 3 days before the family dinner. I was having lunch at a small cafe near my office when Natalie walked in. For a moment, we both froze, startled by the unexpected encounter. Then her surprise morphed into a calculated smile as she approached my table. Sophia, what a coincidence. Her voice was honey-sweet, loud enough to be heard by nearby diners. I've been meaning to reach out. This whole situation has gotten so out of hand. I remained silent, acutely aware that the restraining order technically forbade me from engaging with her, yet she had deliberately approached me. I just want you to know, I forgive you, she continued, placing her hand dramatically over her heart. I understand that sometimes mental health struggles can make people lash out. Ryan and I are both praying for you. The performance was masterful, concerned future sister-in-law, reaching out to troubled family member. Several patrons were openly watching now, drawn to the drama unfolding. You filed a restraining order against me, I said quietly. I'm not legally allowed to have this conversation. Oh, that, she waved dismissively. That was just because I was scared after those awful emails. I'm sure you didn't mean the things you said. We all say things we regret sometimes. My hands clenched under the table. She was deliberately creating a scene, knowing I couldn't respond without potentially violating the order she herself had obtained. I should go, I said, reaching for my purse. Don't be silly. We're family. She placed her hand on my arm, stopping me. Ryan misses you, you know. He's been so hurt by all this. Something in me snapped. Not in a rage-filled dramatic way, but in a clarity-bringing moment of absolute certainty. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. I know what you're doing, Natalie, I said calmly. I know about Emma Russell and Derek Chambers. I know about the fake reviews targeting my business. I know about the fabricated texts you showed my family. Her smile faltered slightly before regaining its brilliance. I have no idea what you're talking about. This paranoia is exactly what Ryan has been worried about. I have evidence, real evidence, testimonials from everyone you've done this to before, documentation of the campaign against my business. Proof that the threatening emails came from an IP address associated with your cousin's marketing firm. The color drained from her face. That's ridiculous. No one will believe you. People already do believe me. Grandmother Margaret, Uncle Robert, Cousin David. Even Mom is starting to ask questions. Her mask slipped then, just for an instant the veneer of concern replaced by cold fury. You've always been in the way, she hissed, voice low, always trying to keep him tied to you. He's mine now, my family, my future. You're nothing but a sad, jealous, lonely woman who can't let go. Natalie. We both turned to see Ryan standing in the cafe doorway, shock written across his face. Neither of us had noticed him arrive. Ryan. Natalie's demeanor transformed instantly, tears springing to her eyes. I was just trying to make peace, and she started threatening me again. That's not what happened, I said, looking directly at my brother. She approached me, knowing I have a restraining order. This was a setup. Ryan looked between us, confusion evident. For the first time in months, I saw doubt in his eyes as he processed the scene. She's been lying to you, I continued, seizing the moment. About everything. The brother who doesn't exist. The threats I never made. Ask yourself why everyone who was once close to her ends up isolated and vilified. Stop it, Ryan said, but without conviction. Just stop. You know me, Ryan. Your whole life. You've known me. When have I ever been the person she describes? When have I ever been vindictive or jealous or unstable? I have proof, I added, pulling out my phone. Real proof that she's been systematically trying to destroy my reputation and my business. That she's done this before to others. Don't listen to her, Natalie cried, grabbing Ryan's arm. She's trying to manipulate you, just like she always does. Ryan looked overwhelmed, torn between the sister he'd known his entire life and the woman he planned to marry in 2 weeks. I'm leaving, I said, gathering my things. But Ryan, before the wedding, before you make this permanent, please, just look at the evidence. That's all I'm asking. As I walked past them toward the door, Natalie lunged forward, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. You think you're so clever, she whispered, her voice now stripped of all pretense. But he will never choose you over me, never. In her anger, she dug her nails into my skin hard enough to draw blood, a small but painful injury that wouldn't have been significant except for one crucial detail. The entire interaction was being recorded by the cafe's security camera, which my lawyer had already arranged to preserve as evidence for our restraining order hearing. That moment, Natalie physically attacking me while I attempted to leave peacefully, became the turning point in our conflict. But the real breakthrough would come at the family gathering I was legally barred from attending. The restraining order hearing gives us an opportunity, Benjamin explained as we reviewed our strategy in his office. Rather than just defending against her accusations, we can present our counter-evidence in a legal forum where false statements have consequences. The temporary restraining order had effectively isolated me further, preventing me from attending the pre-wedding family dinner and reinforcing the narrative that I was dangerous or unstable. But it had also energized our efforts to document the campaign against me. We spent hours organizing the evidence into clear, indisputable exhibits. Testimony from Emma, Derek, and others who had experienced similar treatment. Technical analysis proving the threatening emails came from an IP address linked to Victoria Marketing. Documentation of the fake online reviews and their connection to Natalie's cousin. The cafe security footage showing Natalie's aggressive behavior. Medical photographs of the scratches she had inflicted. Affidavits from clients and colleagues attesting to my professional reputation. Character statements from friends who had known me for years. You've built a solid defense against the restraining order, Benjamin assured me. But more importantly, you've created a comprehensive record of the pattern of harassment you've experienced. While the legal preparations continued, we also developed a strategy for reconnecting with my family. Jessica suggested we create a secure website documenting the timeline of events with supporting evidence. Not to share publicly, she clarified, but something we can give access to for specific family members who are willing to look at the facts. Our digital security expert created a password-protected site organized chronologically, presenting the evidence in a clear, factual manner without emotional language or accusations. We included only claims we could definitively prove, avoiding speculation about Natalie's motives or character. The first person we granted access was grandmother Margaret, who had already expressed belief in my version of events. She spent an entire day reviewing the materials. I've seen enough, she announced afterward in a phone call. This young woman has no business joining our family if this is how she behaves. I'll be speaking with your parents before the dinner. True to her word, my grandmother, whose financial support had helped both my parents through college and had established trust funds for both Ryan and me, made her opinion known. While she didn't share the website access without my permission, her unequivocal support carried significant weight. Uncle Robert was next. As a retired judge, he approached the evidence with professional skepticism but ultimately reached the same conclusion. In my courtroom, I'd find this pattern of behavior deeply troubling, he told me. Especially the escalation to false police reports and manufactured evidence. With these two influential family members firmly in my corner, others began to question the narratives they'd been fed. Cousin David, who had witnessed the wine accident at Christmas, was particularly affected by seeing the broader pattern of behavior. I remember thinking something was off about that incident, he admitted. The look on her face before she noticed me watching. I should have said something then. As the family dinner approached the gathering, I was prohibited from attending due to the restraining order. We made a calculated decision to send Ryan an anonymous email with partial evidence of Natalie's deception. Not everything we had gathered, but enough to potentially open his eyes. Testimony from Derek about the similar isolation tactics, proof that the brother I had supposedly harassed didn't exist, and documentation of the fake reviews targeting my business. I wasn't optimistic about his response, given his previous reaction. But something unexpected happened. Rather than an angry call or text, I received a brief message. I need time to think about all this. Don't contact me before the dinner. It wasn't much, but it suggested he was at least considering the possibility that Natalie wasn't being truthful. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope that my brother might see through the manipulation. That hope was nearly extinguished the next day when police officers appeared at my door again. Natalie had filed another report, this time claiming I had sent a threatening package to her apartment containing dead flowers and a note saying, "Till death do you part." I was taken to the station for questioning, where Benjamin met me. The evidence against me was again circumstantial. The package had my return address, but no definitive proof I had sent it. Still, combined with the previous allegations and restraining order, it was enough to hold me for several hours while they investigated. "This is clearly an attempt to have you in custody during the family dinner tonight," Benjamin said as we waited. "The timing is too convenient." He was right. By the time I was released with another warning to stay away from Natalie and Ryan, the family gathering was already underway. Natalie had successfully prevented me from having any influence on the narrative that would be presented there. Or so she thought. What she couldn't have anticipated was that grandmother Margaret, Uncle Robert, cousin David, and several others had now seen the evidence website. They arrived at the dinner armed with facts and questions that wouldn't be easily dismissed. I spent that evening alone in my apartment, jumping at every sound, expecting another false accusation or escalation. Instead, at nearly midnight, I received a text from my cousin Rachel. "You need to see this." Natalie completely lost it when Grandma started asking questions. "Ryan is finally seeing what's happening. Call me tomorrow." Attached was a short video clip filmed discreetly at the dinner. In it, Natalie was standing, face flushed with anger, pointing at my grandmother. "You've all been against me from the start," she shouted. "None of you ever thought I was good enough for your precious Ryan. Well, guess what? He chose me, not any of you, and especially not her." The clip ended there, but it was enough. The mask had slipped in front of witnesses who mattered. The controlled, sweet persona Natalie had cultivated had cracked under pressure, revealing the anger beneath. The next morning, I received an unexpected text from Ryan. "We need to talk. In person. Important." After consulting with Benjamin about the legal implications given the restraining order, we arranged a meeting at his office where he could serve as a witness. Ryan arrived looking exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and a defeated slump to his shoulders I had never seen before. "I don't even know where to begin," he said, sitting heavily in the chair across from me. "Everything is falling apart." "Start with why you wanted to meet," I suggested gently. He ran his hands through his hair. "After last night, I've been asking myself some hard questions. About Natalie, about her stories that never quite add up, about how everyone I care about seems to eventually become a problem in her eyes." "What happened at the dinner?" "Grandma started asking about your absence, about the restraining order. She had specific questions. About Natalie's brother that I've never met. About the timeline of when you supposedly threatened her. Details that Natalie kept changing as she answered." He looked up, meeting my eyes for the first time. Then Uncle Robert mentioned the cafe incident and said there was video evidence that contradicted her version. She just exploded. "Started accusing everyone of conspiring against her, said terrible things about you, about Grandma. It was like watching a stranger. I didn't recognize the person screaming at my family." "I'm sorry, Ryan," I said, meaning it. Despite everything, I took no pleasure in his pain. "Don't apologize," he said firmly. "I'm the one who should be apologizing. I believed her over my own sister. I let her isolate me from the person who has always been there for me." Tears welled in his eyes. "How could I have been so blind?" "Because she was very good at what she did," I replied. "She didn't start with outrageous lies. She started with small doubts, little comments, gradual changes. By the time the big lies came, you were already primed to believe them." Ryan nodded slowly. "Last night after the dinner, I went home and really looked at the evidence you sent. Then I started checking her stories myself." "Her brother she claimed you harassed?" "I finally demanded to meet him. Turns out he doesn't exist. She has a stepbrother who lives in Australia and hasn't been to the States in years." "There's more," I said carefully. "A lot more." "I know," he sighed heavily. "Grandma showed me the website. I spent all night going through it, the testimonials from her ex-friends, the evidence about the fake reviews attacking your business, the documentation of how the threatening emails traced back to her cousin's company." He looked utterly shattered. "I was going to marry someone I didn't even know, someone who deliberately tried to destroy my sister's life just to keep me isolated and dependent." For the first time since this ordeal began, I felt the knot of tension in my chest begin to loosen. My brother, my real brother, not the manipulated version Natalie had created, was finally seeing the truth. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said with newfound resolve, "we deal with the restraining order based on false accusations. Then, I have a wedding to cancel." Despite Ryan's change of heart, the restraining order remained legally binding until our court date. This created a complicated situation as the family tried to process recent revelations and determine next steps regarding the rapidly approaching wedding. With Ryan now aware of Natalie's manipulations, many assumed the ceremony would simply be cancelled, but the reality proved messier. "She's refusing to accept it's over," Ryan told me during a call from Benjamin's office, where he could legally speak with me. "She switches between tearful apologies claiming she'll get therapy and vicious threats about ruining my life if I leave her. The venue deposits, the invitations already sent. It's a nightmare." "And the restraining order?" I asked. "We're working on it. She won't agree to withdraw the petition, which means we still need to attend the hearing." The family gathering scheduled for the weekend, a casual barbecue at my parents' home 3 days before the hearing and 10 days before the planned wedding date became the unexpected setting for a final confrontation. Though I remained legally barred from attending, arrangements were made for me to participate remotely via video call, with Jessica attending in person as my support. As I prepared for this digital family reunion, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. The truth was finally emerging, but at such a cost to Ryan and our family. There was no pleasure in seeing my brother's heartbreak, despite the validation of my own experiences. Remember to stay calm no matter what happens, Benjamin advised before the gathering. The restraining order hearing is still pending, and anything you say or do could be used against you. The video call connected at noon, revealing my parents' backyard filled with familiar faces, some supportive, others confused or uncomfortable. My mother's pinched expression showed the strain of recent events, while my father seemed to have aged years and months. Ryan stood slightly apart from the group, tension evident in his posture. Sophia, grandmother Margaret's voice rang out as she positioned herself directly in front of the tablet Jessica held. "There you are, dear, we've been waiting." Her public acknowledgement set the tone, making it clear to everyone that I was a welcomed participant despite my physical absence. One by one, family members approached the screen to greet me, some apologizing for believing Natalie's lies, others simply expressing support. Noticeably absent was Natalie herself until 30 minutes into the gathering, when she arrived unannounced at the front door. She wasn't invited, my father's voice came through the speakers as the tablet's view swung toward the commotion. "I'm still his fiancée," Natalie protested loudly. "I have every right to be at a family function." Through the somewhat chaotic video feed, I watched as she pushed past my father into the backyard. She had clearly made an effort with her appearance, hair, and makeup flawless, wearing a sundress that somehow struck the perfect balance between casual and elegant. The consummate performer preparing for her most important role yet. "Ryan," she called out, her voice softening as she approached him. "We need to talk, privately." My brother's expression remained impassive. "Anything you have to say can be said here." Her eyes scanned the gathering, noting the tablet in Jessica's hands. When she realized I was virtually present, her carefully constructed mask slipped momentarily before she recovered. "Is that Sophia, the woman who has a restraining order against her for threatening me?" She turned to address the group. "And you're including her in family events? Do none of you care about my safety?" Uncle Robert stepped forward then, his former judge's authority evident in his bearing. "Natalie, we've all seen the evidence. The fabricated emails, the non-existent brother, the coordinated attacks on Sophia's business. The question isn't about Sophia's behavior anymore, it's about yours." Natalie's strategy shifted instantly, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't know what she's told you, but I would never do those things. Ryan, please, you know me." "Do I?" Ryan asked quietly. "Because I've spent the last week discovering that much of what I thought I knew about you was carefully constructed fiction." "That's not fair. I've been under so much stress with the wedding planning. Maybe I've made some mistakes, said things I shouldn't have, but that doesn't mean I'm some kind of monster." The performance was compelling the wounded bride-to-be, overwhelmed by wedding preparations, now facing a hostile family influenced by a jealous sister. In another time, it might have worked, but the family had seen too much evidence, asked too many questions that yielded contradictory answers. Grandmother Margaret had spoken with Emma and Derek personally. Cousin David had provided his own testimony about witnessing the Christmas wine incident. The foundation of trust was irrevocably damaged. As Natalie continued her emotional appeals, Ryan's phone chimed with a notification. He glanced down, then looked up sharply. "Natalie," he interrupted, "did you file a police report yesterday claiming Sophia violated the restraining order by sending messages through Jessica?" She faltered momentarily. Yes, because she did. She's been using her friend as a go-between to harass me." "That's interesting," Ryan said, his voice hardening, "because I just received confirmation that at the exact time you claim Sophia was having Jessica deliver threats to your workplace, she was actually being interviewed by the district attorney about your previous false report, with multiple witnesses and video documentation of her whereabouts." The blood drained from Natalie's face. "There must be some mistake with the timing." "No mistake," Ryan continued. "Just like there was no mistake with the cafe security footage showing you approaching and grabbing her, not the other way around. Just like there was no mistake about your non-existent brother she supposedly harassed." Natalie's demeanor transformed, desperation replacing the calculated tears. Ryan, please, let's talk about this privately. These people have turned you against me. Can't you see what's happening? I see exactly what's happening, he replied. I finally stopped looking through the lens you created and started seeing the reality you've been hiding. What happened next occurred so quickly that the tablet's camera barely captured it. In a final, desperate attempt to maintain control, Natalie grabbed a nearby wine glass and hurled it to the ground at her feet. As it shattered, she dragged her fingernails across her own forearm, creating angry red scratches. She attacked me, Natalie screamed, pointing at Jessica, who stood several feet away, still holding the tablet. Did everyone see that? She attacked me just like Sophia told her to. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from somewhere out of the tablet's view, my cousin Ted's voice. We all just watched you do that to yourself, Natalie. And I recorded the whole thing. The tablet's view shifted to show Ted holding up his phone, which had indeed been recording the entire interaction. Natalie stared at him, then at the other family members whose faces now showed not confusion or doubt, but unified certainty. You're all against me, she whispered, backing away. You've always been against me. No one was against you until you started lying and manipulating, my mother said, finding her voice at last. Until you tried to destroy my daughter's reputation in business. Until you filed false police reports that could have resulted in criminal charges. I think you should leave, my father added, stepping forward. The wedding is off. Any communication about deposits or cancellations can go through our lawyer. For a moment, Natalie stood frozen, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out, the sound of her car starting and speeding away marking the end of her presence in our family. In the silence that followed, Ryan approached the tablet, his face filling the screen. I'm so sorry, Sophia, for everything. We have a lot to talk about, I replied gently. But not like this. Let's focus on getting the restraining order dismissed first. The family gathering continued without further drama, a subdued but healing experience as relationships began the long process of repair. Jessica reported later that after the video call ended, Ryan had spoken openly about the gradual isolation he had experienced, acknowledging the red flags he had ignored and expressing remorse for his role in enabling Natalie's behavior. 3 days later, we appeared at the restraining order hearing with our evidence prepared. However, Natalie failed to appear, resulting in an automatic dismissal of the order. According to her cousin, who had reached out to Ryan with an apology of her own, Natalie had packed her belongings and left town the night of the family gathering, leaving behind only a terse note. You'll all regret this. The wedding was officially canceled. The venue deposit was forfeited. Guests were notified with a brief explanation citing unforeseen circumstances. And slowly, carefully, my brother and I began the process of rebuilding what had nearly been destroyed. The weeks following Natalie's dramatic exit were a strange mixture of relief and grief. The immediate danger had passed: no more false accusations, no more professional sabotage, no more family members believing I was unstable or vindictive, but the aftermath left wounds that wouldn't heal quickly. Ryan canceled his honeymoon trip to Bali but took the time off anyway, retreating to our family's lake house to process everything that had happened. He called me the day after he arrived. I keep going over every moment, every conversation, he said, his voice raw with emotion, trying to pinpoint when I should have seen through it all. How could I have been so completely fooled? Because she was skilled at what she did, I replied gently. And because you're someone who believes in people. That's not a character flaw, Ryan. But I believed her over you, my own sister, the person who's been there for me my entire life. This became a recurring theme in our conversations over the following months, his struggle to forgive himself for his role in what had happened. In many ways, his journey back to himself proved more challenging than mine. While I had been fighting against an external enemy, clear in my understanding of what was happening, Ryan had to reconcile with how thoroughly he had been manipulated, how completely his perception had been altered. My parents faced their own reckoning. Their failure to stand by me when I needed them most had revealed a weakness in our family foundation that couldn't be ignored. We should have listened to you, my mother acknowledged during a quiet dinner at their home 3 weeks after the canceled wedding. We chose the easier path of accepting Natalie's version of events because confronting the alternative was too uncomfortable. We failed you, my father added simply, and we have to live with that knowledge. My parents faced their own reckoning. Their failure to stand by me when I needed them most had revealed a weakness in our family foundation that couldn't be ignored. We should have listened to you, my mother acknowledged during a quiet dinner at their home 3 weeks after the cancelled wedding. We chose the easier path of accepting Natalie's version of events because confronting the alternative was too uncomfortable. Their candid acknowledgement was the beginning of a healing process, though not an instant fix. Trust, once fractured, requires more than apologies to be restored. It demands consistent action over time. Sometimes a crisis forces you to reevaluate everything, Michael observed, as we reviewed our new business plan. Maybe we needed this push to evolve. The restraining order being dismissed allowed me to file a police report documenting the false accusations. Though the district attorney ultimately decided not to pursue charges against Natalie, citing the difficulty of proving malicious intent beyond reasonable doubt, the report created an official record that could prove valuable if she ever proved Leishan Sargers attempted similar tactics in the future. One unexpected outcome was the support network that formed in Natalie's wake. Emma, Derek, and the others who had shared their experiences with me stayed connected, creating an informal alliance of people who understood the unique trauma of having been targets of such calculated manipulation. It helps to know I wasn't crazy, Emma said during one of our group video calls. For years, I questioned my own memories, my own reality, because no one else seemed to see what I saw in her. That's the most insidious part, Derek agreed. The way it makes you doubt yourself, even when you know something is wrong. This validation, the simple acknowledgement that what we had experienced was real, proved to be a powerful healing force. Together, we shared resources on narcissistic abuse, recommended therapists who specialized in recovery from manipulation, and celebrated each other's progress, however small. 6 months after the wedding that never happened, Ryan organized a family dinner at my favorite restaurant. As we gathered around the table, parents, grandparents, cousins, and close friends, I felt a sense of closure beginning to take shape. I'd like to say something, Ryan announced once everyone was seated. These past months have been educational, to say the least. I've learned some hard lessons about red flags I ignored, about the ease with which relationships can be poisoned by manipulation, and about the courage it takes to stand firm in your truth when everyone is telling you you're wrong. He turned to me then, his eyes bright with unshed tears. Sophia stood alone against a systematic campaign to destroy her personally, professionally, and within our family. She never gave up, never stooped to the tactics being used against her, and never stopped believing that the truth would eventually come to light. The table fell silent, the weight of his words settling over us all. I propose a toast, Grandmother Margaret interjected, raising her glass. To truth that cannot be permanently obscured, to family bonds that bend but do not break, and to the strength it takes to stand your ground when the easier path would be surrender. As glasses clinked around the table, I felt something shift within me, the last knot of tension finally unraveling. The ordeal that had consumed my life for nearly a year was truly over. Not perfectly resolved, not without lasting consequences, but conclusively finished. Later that evening, Ryan and I sat at a quiet corner table in a cafe, not the one where the confrontation with Natalie had occurred, but a new place, symbolic of fresh beginnings. I heard something disturbing today, he said, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. Natalie is dating someone new. Already. A chill ran through me. How did you find out? Mutual acquaintance saw her Instagram. She's moved to Chicago, completely rebranded herself as a wellness coach, and is dating some tech entrepreneur. 3 months after everything that happened here, I thought of the man who had unwittingly stepped into the role Ryan had recently occupied, someone who likely saw only Natalie's carefully curated public persona, unaware of what lurked beneath. Should we try to warn him somehow? I asked. Ryan considered this. I did some research and found his sister on LinkedIn. Sent her a message just saying she should be aware of some concerning patterns in her brother's new relationship. Included links to the court records about the restraining order being dismissed for lack of evidence. That's all I can do ethically. And is that enough? I pressed. He sighed. I don't know, Soph. I hope so, but ultimately he'll have to see it for himself, just like I did. Some lessons can't be learned secondhand. We fell silent then, each lost in our own thoughts about how different things might have been if I had simply acquiesced to my exclusion from the wedding, if I had accepted Natalie's narrative rather than fighting to expose the truth. The ripple effects of that single text message had transformed all our lives in ways we were still discovering. You know what I've learned from all this? I finally said. What's that? That sometimes the family we fight hardest for is the one most worth saving, but never at the expense of your own truth. Ryan smiled then, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, something I hadn't seen in far too long. I'll drink to that. As we clinked our coffee cups in a mock toast, I felt a profound gratitude for this moment of ordinary connection, this simple act of siblings sharing conversation and laughter. After months of chaos and pain, there was something beautiful in the mundane, something precious in the restored normalcy of our relationship. The wedding that never happened had nearly destroyed us all. But in fighting for the truth, we had ultimately found something more valuable than any ceremony could provide: a deeper understanding of ourselves, a stronger foundation of trust, and the knowledge that some bonds, when tested to their limits, emerge not just intact but strengthened in ways previously unimaginable. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If you've ever experienced someone trying to isolate you from your loved ones, or had to stand up for yourself when everyone doubted you, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Was there something in my story that resonated with your own experiences? How did you handle it? Don't forget to hit that like button if this story touched something in you, subscribe to hear more real-life dramas, and share this with anyone who might need to hear that standing in your truth is always worth it, even when it's the hardest thing you've ever done. Until next time, remember that sometimes the most important relationship to protect is the one with yourself.